Welcome to the WarriorHER Podcast, a show dedicated to those looking to excel in business, life, and family. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Nikki, and we're sharing the stories of remarkable women making their mark on the world, sharing the valuable lessons they've learned and the wisdom they've gained along the way.
'Cause even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause even when I lose, I don't ever take it now. I don't ever take it now. I don't ever take it now. I don't ever take it now.
Hello, and welcome back now to season 4 officially of the WarriorHER Podcast. Today's episode is not just about healing as a buzzword, but as a responsibility. We're joined by Dr. LaNail Plummer, a mental health leader, educator, founder, and now author, whose work asks a question about the mental health field has avoided for far too long, which is who is care actually built for and who has historically been left out.
Yeah. Hello, y'all. Hey.
How you doing?
We are
so happy to have you here with us. But before we dive in, we want to quickly talk about something a little personal. So I don't know if you remember this, but Courtney and I met you a couple of years ago in New Orleans. I think it was during Noe, if I'm not mistaken.
No. It was
it during Essence?
Yeah.
Okay, it was during Essence, at Essence Fest.
With Sabrina Short and Dr.
Short.
J. And you were on a panel.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And we have just been
so much
following you.
Yes.
Ever since.
Because you were so dope. And we were like, yes, I love her. Alignment. Everything you were talking about, we felt that like to our spirit. So we definitely been following your journey for a couple of years now. Courtney really loves you so much.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yes, and I was like, she definitely from DC before you even said it. When you during the panel, I was like, I know a DC accent when I hear one right away.
Wait, Courtney, do I really have a DC accent? I'm from LA. My family is gonna tear me up.
It was just some of the things you said that I was like, sis from DC.
Oh, year makes 28 years that I've been here. So I guess it's coming out now. Ooh, 28 years. Let me not age myself for the people now. Let them think I'm young.
You look wonderful.
Thank you.
But yeah, so this definitely feels very, very full circle. So we're really, really happy to be able to, talk about all of your successes, all the big things you have coming up. And I know you just mentioned that you spent the last 20 years doing this wonderful work. What moments earlier in your career made it clear that this system that we're in currently is not built with Black women in mind at all?
It probably came before I even started my career. I think recognizing the gap is part of why I became a therapist in the first place. But I was a little kid when I started. I was probably about 7 or so when I really got interested in understanding the differences in how people made decisions. And for me at the time, I was growing up in the hood outside of LA. And I was curious, like, why when I go to some of these neighborhoods where most of the people are white, it looks this way and people are doing these kind of things and having these kind of jobs and living these kind of lives. But then when I go to my neighborhood, things look a little different. And at the time, I was 7, so I didn't know all the things and I didn't understand systems and I didn't understand like economy and all of that kind of stuff. I didn't have a good grasp on slavery because the way that it was presented in school wasn't the way that it actually was. And so I was just always curious. And so I think I've always known for as much as I could remember that the systems were different. It wasn't until I got a bit older, maybe middle school, that I really started to dive deep into why they were different. I've always been a nerdy kid. And so everybody else was outside doing, doing jump rope and playing hopscotch. And I did the thing, but I preferred to spend most of my time in the library with the Dewey Decimal System at the time. So I was always kind of curious about it. When I got deeper into the field, of course, I went to Howard. And so all of my education was centered around Blackness, and every system that we knew was deconstructed through the Black lens. And so that's when I really was able to start putting words to the experiences and to fill in some of the gaps that maybe the library books didn't have or didn't give me understanding for. So I think I've always recognized that there was a difference. It was a certain point in my life when I recognized that I was going to make a difference in that as well. So I was like, hey, somebody has to do it, and why not let it be me? Yeah.
I love that.
I love it too. I resonate a lot with more of your story that I had looked into, just how you got into this field. But I also am a behavior analyst by trade. Yay! That's my background, which is a little different, or a lot different, really. But I'm really curious why you feel like it's dangerous to treat mental health care as neutral or culture free.
Because it's not, because all of who we are as people our culture is integrated in who we are from the very beginning. Like, even let's say gender, for instance, baby girls are even treated differently than baby boys, right? Like, we hold them in a different way, but we'll toss a baby boy up in the air and we'll cradle a baby girl next to us, right? Like, it's a bit of a difference in how we engage. Baby girls are taught from the beginning. Like in my book, I mentioned that baby dolls are marketed to baby girls before they can even walk, right? Like, we are taught at that point that we need to take care of somebody else even before we know how to take care of ourselves. And boys are taught that they can be aggressive, and they should be aggressive, and they should always be on the move. Their toys were trucks that were always moving, so they were always moving. And girls were taught to be sedentary and to sit and observe and do all of these things. And those are cultural elements. Culture is more than just race. And so when we go into mental health and we try to remove some of the cultural nuances, that's removing who the person is. We've exposed them to culture from the moment they were born. The ways that we, when a baby is teething in different cultures, there's different ways that you treat a teething baby, right? Like, when a child is about to go to school and you're preparing them in how to engage with their classmates, there's cultural nuances that are connected in that, whether it's based off of survival and protection, or it's based off of curiosity and interest. And so when we try to remove that, we remove the essence of who that person is, and that doesn't make sense. And part of the reason that happens is because primary education was designed for white men, and mental health was designed for white men. And so those two things make sense when you pair them together. But Black women were not included in the original elements of education in the United States, nor were they included in mental health. And so trying to put us in these boxes means that there's lots of who we are that is either having to be removed and like shed, or we just simply don't see ourselves and end up feeling worse than we did when we started. So I guess that's the long answer, the nerdy answer, but the short answer would be, we can't remove culture, because culture is who we are from the moment that we're born.
It shapes us. Man, that resonates, that hits home. As a Black woman who I'm, very involved in the mental health space from both sides of the spectrum. I work in the tech industry currently, but prior to that, I worked directly in mental health for 8 years before I made that switch into this industry. Both of my parents work with children who are on a range of spectrums with their mental health. I worked with adults with developmental disabilities, with schizophrenia, all the things. And it was majority in African-American communities. So just seeing their lives and what they experience day to day really shaped who I am and what I care about and what I'm passionate about. And not only from that point of view, but also my own personal lived experience. I'm neurodivergent. I'm odd ADHD. So I was late diagnosis for both of those diagnoses. And the process that I had to go through, I almost felt like they didn't believe me.
Yep.
When I was saying what I experienced, I had to go through so many hoops to get my initial diagnosis. Like, they put a brain scan on me. Like, I was like, man, I'm being honest about my lived experiences. I like check all the boxes. But to your point, you know, a lot of the way in which they came up with those exams to even determine that was based on white males specifically.
Yeah.
And it presents different women in general, but then you go into that subcategory of
the cultural
differences
how
and
they're
aspects.
assessing it. And it's our startup is in autism, and so because of my background in ABA, right, and just there isn't representation for us in autism. That's really anything outside of white also.
That's right.
Really. You know, and there's so many other people who that fit. So that is something that we're really obviously just aligned to. But I just thought of this, but I know someone who I think would be a great introduction offline, who they do his whole company is on clinical trials and making sure that there's Black representation. I don't know. I just feel like that's probably a good connection for you, but it's really exciting to do this. I'm going to also give you a little background myself. I grew up mixed in Florida in the South. I was raised by like my white family. So I didn't even have a lot of exposure to my people until probably the last 10 years. And then over the last 3 years, I've completely changed all of my providers to primarily Black women, and the quality of my care has quadrupled. Like, I don't have that layer of, okay, I need to explain all these other pieces to you before I can even start therapy. And I did after that panel. I was like literally trying to work with you, and you were like not taking clients at the time. And I was like, no, I want her. I want to work with her directly. But I have had some really great care since, and it matters, you know. And I think being someone who's also mixed, trying to explain them, trying to say this in a way that isn't
just say it.
But like with my white family, trying to even get them to understand that layer is there is often futile because they just don't get it. And I had told Nikki, I'm like, you know, growing up, they're not talking about race. They're not talking about
experience.
Anyone else's experience. And so they could only relate to me. So I always just was different because I was in fact different. But having that representation and people who just get it that I don't have to explain to has been, I'm like, oh, I don't have to tell someone over and over and over again that I'm in pain or I'm uncomfortable or why do I have anxiety or making major life transitions. It's just been wonderful. So I'm really happy that people are going to hear this and that there's people all over the world who are going to hear this because it's really useful.
It's about being useful. That kind of led into one of the next questions that I have, since we were talking about that with like traditional clinical models, they consistently misunderstand the Black women's lived experiences. Why do you think that is, Dr. Plummer?
I think that's part of what you all were saying just a second ago. And I would love to be connected to that gentleman who is making sure that there's proper representation, Black representation in clinical trials. So when we think about clinical work, a lot of it is based off of historical mental health and traditional psychology models. And many of those models, when we think about the fathers of psychology, they were all white men, rich white men in Europe, right? Like they were all physicians from wealthy families who had an interest in people, right? Maybe of all of them, Freud was the most diverse, but he had a lot of his challenges, but he was the most diverse because he often traveled to the continent of Africa with a respect for African people. But he also was writing theory as a Jewish man in Vienna during a war, right? And so he himself was in fear of what was going on in his life while also trying to treat other people. All of that to say that their lived experiences were very much about their own white male system and perspective of life. And there was not even a consideration to add in Black folks into this work. And so then as that continued to happen, these theories created more research, and then the research created these studies, kind of like what you're saying the gentleman is trying to advocate for us to be in. So all these disorders that are in the DSM are based off of research studies. And in those research studies, Black women were not included. And so then symptoms and specifiers became part of the equation based off of how the white man was experiencing his issue, how he was experiencing depression, how he was experiencing anxiety, how he was experiencing social anxiety. When we add in the layer of gender and race to that, specifically for Black women, there's places where we were never permitted to have a particular experience, and therefore that symptom would never show up for us. So there are times when you see Black women who are depressed and they are laying in bed, which is one of the major symptoms, right? Like, are you getting out of bed? But in all reality, Black women are not often given the permission to just lay in bed, right? Like, we don't have generational wealth that we're dependent on. So if we're going to eat, it means we have to work. We are oftentimes trying to get out of debt because debt is introduced to us far earlier than it is to white people, right? And so we're trying to get out of debt. So in order to make sure that we stay housed and we stay clothed, we have to go to work. You know, there's different ways of attachment that is connected to who we are and the relationships that we built for various historical reasons that's in the book. But it also contributes to why sometimes we may be having children earlier than other people are having children. So we have to get out of bed because we have to provide for these kids. So the way depression looks for us is not going to have the same symptoms as it does for white men. And so therefore people get misclassified. And so earlier when you were saying that they didn't believe you when you were given your symptoms, of course they didn't, because it didn't fit into any of their criteria. So they're like, well, what is this? Because it doesn't match what we think it should match. And that's why the book is important too, because Black women, if they have those experiences, luckily for you, you have the tenacity and the perseverance to continue to advocate for your health. But for some women, they don't necessarily have that, or they don't have the time to pursue it, or they don't have the resources to pursue it. So then they just give up. And if they give up, then the next generation is watching a person who is dealing with a mental health issue or dealing with something like being neurodivergent, but not being treated. And so then that next generation either learns that same behavior, even though that may not be their particular issue, and they move as if it is, or they're spending so much of their life trying to understand who their parents were and how they decided to parent them. So the book is important because it gives language to what we are experiencing as Black women, whether it's in, you know, the medical field like you were talking about, or whether it's in the identity space that you were talking about, Courtney. It gives language to what we're experiencing, so that when we do go to therapy, we can say, hey, this is what I need to talk about. Hey, this is what it really is. I don't need you to keep telling me that it's okay over here. I need to talk about the fact that I spent 6 months trying to get a diagnosis for ADHD, and that wore me the hell out, right? And I'm tired, and I need to process that. I don't want to talk about the medication. I want to talk about how I feel when they weren't listening to me, when it's my body and people are telling me that what I am saying about my body is not true. That's exhausting. It puts us in a place of defense and survival. And I don't really think that that's why our God put us here on this earth, just to survive. I think we were designed to thrive. And the work that I'm doing is trying to shed some of that mess so that we can really get into our place of thriving and use the resources that are available to us so that we can thrive.
Ooh, that was a whole word.
Yeah, and it's just so real too. I mean, sometimes too, like everything you said, I think it's being able to have permission to even feel what you were just saying.
I know.
Like that's the
starter
layer of not having to explain that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
going through it even with my son now, who we're trying to get his autism diagnosis. I have been in I'm like, I know what's going on here. Like,
Yeah.
I am aware. I don't diagnose officially, but I've been doing this long enough, I can tell, and starting to even wonder with my older daughter, like just certain things. And children, right, are like minority children are more likely to be diagnosed with some type of operational defiant disorder or behavioral disorder instead of like an autism or an ADHD. And
where
then
they can get the services that they
Or
need.
rather, or even a trauma disorder. Like I think people overlook trauma disorders, especially for Black people.
Like,
You know, our
PTSD.
ACE scores are so high. I could talk to you guys about this because of your work with children. And so for those that are listening, ACE scores is those adverse childhood experiences. And it's the things that are happening in while you were a child that were completely out of your control that affects both your physical health and your mental health. People that have high ACE scores usually have a physical health issue like as they get older, diabetes, hypertension, severe asthma, and they also have a mental health issue. So it becomes a sense of comorbidity because of childhood experiences. Those adverse childhood experiences are traumatic, and people overlook those. And so instead of identifying that this child, because of these systems, not necessarily just because of their parents, but because of these systems, have adverse childhood experiences, and that is traumatic, they'd rather diagnose them with ADHD. And sometimes it's not ADHD. A child may be hypervigilant and hyperactive about certain things as a trauma response, because isn't that what would happen for any of us? If you've experienced trauma and all of a sudden you're like, your head is on a swivel all the time because you're like, where is the next attack coming from? Is it an emotional attack? Is it a mental
100%.
attack? Is it a physical attack? You know, is it where is it coming from? And so therefore there's a lot of misdiagnosing, you know what I mean? And yes, to your point, they may misdiagnose with some of the more aggressive disorders like an oppositional defiant disorder as opposed to a dysregulated mood disorder, because the dysregulated mood disorder has a softer landing. It means that the person is depressed. But in actuality, the ODD is seen more like a conduct disorder, like it's something that they can control. And in that situation, both of them may be chemically out of their control, which is why we need to be assessing what's happening with their blood, what's happening in their labs, what's happening with their medication, what's happening with the food that they eat. When I was working as a school counselor, years ago, my God, my work, I changed all of my students' diets. Like, y'all not eating donuts, y'all not eating red dye, you're coming in here, you're drinking water, which meant that because I was working in the school, I had to change the school's nutrition plan. So I worked with the school nutrition staff because I was like, the food that you're giving the students is actually exacerbating some of their symptoms. And then when they are getting these psychological assessments, they're coming off in ways that are not true. If we could level out their consumption and their nutrition, then I could see the baseline of who they truly are, and then I could do a true diagnosis for them.
Wow.
But it took a system.
That's holistic health, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, that's like the definition of holistic health. We're not just, addressing the issues that are taking place from the behaviors that we're seeing in the classroom, but also their baseline. Like, where are they starting from? What are they experiencing in their homes? What are they consuming? And and that's when that cultural aspect comes in, and those traumas that can come about is, what if it's a person that grows up on food stamps or they only can afford McDonald's, or they only can afford the cheaper things, and then we get to a societal level where you notice that in specific neighborhoods, those hoods, there's certain types of food in that area that is always there, right? They don't have access to the healthier options. Where I grew up, there wasn't something similar to a Whole Foods in sight. There was no, you got Save-A-Lot, right? And that's just the truth. And people don't have the education. They're just in survival mode. And that then affects, all kinds of mental health there and emotional health as well. We were just talking about, I'll give you a prime example. I was on TikTok, I'm a lurker on TikTok. I don't post as much. She's the poster. But we saw this video and I had to watch it a couple of times. And this girl was talking about the anxiety and the emotional trauma that she experienced from growing up in a home that had an infestation of bugs
Oh yeah, man.
that start
Yeah.
with the letter R, right?
Yeah.
That
Oh yeah.
happens unfortunately in so many Black communities or Black and brown communities that are poor.
I mean,
And just
it happened in my house. We grew up and in the projects, and the appliances were taken from one apartment to another apartment when you moved in. And I remember there was this time where there were all these roaches in the refrigerator, and I woke up and they were everywhere, and I was like, what the heck, right? And maybe a couple weeks ago, I live out here in Bowie, Maryland now, so it's a lot of trees and grass and stuff like that. And one day I woke up and I guess we have forgot our ant treatment, and ants were all over the kitchen. My God, Courtney and Nikki, I lost it. I literally started screaming in my house to my wife, this is trauma, this is trauma, this is trauma. And she was like, what the heck? And later that day, she had the ant guys coming out and treating everything. But it took me back to that moment, and it took me back to all the challenges that I had when I was that age. And it took me back to all the memories that I had. And then it made me think about all my friends that I left and what they're living, what their life is like right now, and then what's going on with them and their children, and all because that is exactly what a trigger is, right? Like it takes you back to those moments and you start having all these intrusive thoughts. And luckily I'm a therapist, so I know how to ground myself. But just because I know the skills to ground myself doesn't mean that my body and my mind and my brain, right, doesn't go back into those moments of fear and survival. But before I say something else, I wanted to talk, because you all mentioned that we don't have the permission to think about certain emotions, and we don't have the permission to talk about certain things. I have chapter 7 in my book that specifically talks about working with emotions. And I start out that chapter with the fact that we have not been able to have permission for certain emotions, right? Like we are able to experience things like shame and guilt and doubt, but then we don't have the opportunity and the permission to experience things like grace. It literally, the section is called Common Emotions That Black Women Avoid or Are Not Allowed to Experience. And it's like grace is in there. We could give grace to other people, but my God, if we give grace to ourselves, then we're called funny acting, right? We're said that we are stuck up and that we think we're better than other people. And there's so many things in that particular chapter for us to journal about and questions to ask ourselves, because the world hasn't given us the permission, but but it's our time to give ourselves our own permission. It's our time to acknowledge that these feelings are natural. Feelings are natural, connected to the amygdala, which is part of our brain. Like it's a natural thing. And it is very close in proximity in the brain to hippocampus, which is where the learning and the memory happens. And so we feel as we learn, we feel as we remember as we feel. And it's this kind of back and forth experience. And when we deny ourselves the opportunity to feel, we are acting as if we're shutting down our brain. And based off of oppression and master suppression, at this point, nobody has to do it because we do it to ourselves. And that's the sad part, right? Like that's the part that they want it from us. Like nobody has to enslave us or silence us because we do it to ourselves at this point. And my book is dedicated to Black women. Although it's called The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women, I was writing to my
That's
sister,
what I was going to ask about.
I was writing to my sister. Yeah, like you stop, don't let us stop. Let us stop. Let us stop silencing ourselves. Let us stop feeling like we have to live life the way somebody told us to live life. Let us stop, believing that we can't experience this emotion. Let us stop putting ourselves in these boxes. Like F all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like read the book, get into the work, feel all your feelings, go to therapy. And then when you go to therapy, your therapist should also have the book so they know how to respond to you, right? Like they're not suppressing you with some of their ignorance as well.
I love that. That is, I mean, we had like questions, right? You were like, answer them all. Like,
my bad.
Your wonderful monologue that is going to bless so many people. But, I agree 100%, obviously, because Black women, we're often praised for like our resilience and our strength, right? But we're rarely supported in our rest or repair.
Right.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And that is, unfortunately a narrative that, obviously what you're talking about in the book that we see from a clinical, standpoint, and that's harmful to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, it's so harmful. And so, I mean, this just touches home so much for me because I've experienced so many things in my life that, that just plays right into everything you're talking to, not even just from, the mental health standpoint, but just even with my physical health and all that I've experienced in my life. And I've talked about this, publicly, having, doctors who care about your holistic health is so important for Black women to like put into place for themselves, Black and brown women, because we just are not treated equally, unfortunately. And when it comes to your book, you mentioned that, this is for our sisters, this is for Black women in mind. Obviously we're helping their therapists, right? But, in those first 20 pages of the book, when a sister picks it up, or that I gifted to, because I plan on gifting this to some people, what do you want them to feel in those first 20 pages of the book as they read it?
The first 20 pages are probably some of the more complex part of the book, right? Because I had as a spiritual commandment, introduce patriarchy and racism as the foundation. Because to the point that was made earlier, I think by you, Courtney, with your white family, it's not something that's talked about. Race is not talked about. And so if a white person picks up this book, they're going to be like, and what's different about counseling a Black woman than any of my other clients? So I had to introduce race and I had to introduce gender. And so those first 20 pages is part one. And that's when Black women are probably going to be like, oh, shoot, she said it. Like, oh, somebody said the stuff, right? Like, oh, dang, y'all read this, right? So I want people to feel empowered, but it's a tough part. In fact, everybody that's been reading the book is doing really well. It's actually on the Forbes list for 2026. And so everybody thank you. And it made bestseller.
On the Forbes list.
Come on now. I'm about to say, like, so proud of you,
Thank you. But oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's already on its way to our house. It just dropped, like the other day. So I was like, come on, Amazon, get it to me quick. But I, got it just for us initially. Yeah. Hopefully, was hoping it would get here fast enough, but it didn't. And that's okay. But I have several more I want to purchase because I have just having this conversation makes me think about so many good friends that I have, because I'm always like, I call myself Dr. Felicia because I'm that friend that people come and confide in, and and I'm the strong friend, and oftentimes I say, yeah, it's the truth. Oftentimes I say, hey, I need to have that grace too. So I'm reading it for myself, but also I want to share that with some people that I know need it. Because it's such an important topic, and I'm glad to hear that you set that foundation in the very beginning, so that people can understand, because, hopefully it's not just Black women reading this, I know that this is going to be important as a whole for the industry, because I have a white therapist, Nicole, shout out to you, girl. I love you so much. But she's incredible, and I think, giving this to her will just take her clients and her client relationship to another level, and just her whole outlook on how she handles, her sessions with Black and brown people moving forward.
I shared it with my therapist too.
Yes.
Thank you. And for the people who, for you all, because by the time the podcast airs, it'll be after the first week. But when you are buying books that are brand new that you really like, try to buy as many as you can in the first week, because those first week sales matter to the publishers. Like that's when they decide how they have the momentum. So the part of the reason, unfortunately, that many people who order through Amazon, the reason they don't have their books right away is because Amazon was not prepared for the book to do as well as it did. So they didn't order enough copies from the publisher. And so now they're trying to like get all of that done because it kind of threw them off. But if you're going to order some books, please order them immediately because
good problem to have, right?
It's a good problem to have. And make sure your therapist is reading it, because what I wrote in the book, as I direct the book to, I'm directing some language directly to clinicians and some to Black women. And when I'm talking to the clinicians, I'm saying, I know you are well intended, because outside of being the CEO of Onyx and the author of this book, I'm also a department chair at a university. So I see how many students are coming in and they're so well intended, right? Like they just want to help. They want to do all the things. They want to make sure that they are doing their part in this world. And they just don't have the tools because our multicultural courses in mental health just don't, it's 15 weeks, right? And it's 15 weeks where we're asking the clinician to explore their race and their gender and their identity. And then we're spending maybe a class talking about Black people, maybe a class talking about Latinos, maybe a class talking about 2.5 hours talking about a population that you're going to work with is not enough time. Like you got to have the tools. And so many clinicians that are in the work are very well intended and they just don't have the tools. And so giving it to them, encouraging them to use it, encouraging them to read it. And I made it so practical. You know, the book has, I can't wait for you guys to get it. When you get it, send me a message and tell me. But
you're first to get that signed copy, okay?
Yeah, for sure. But it has like catalyst questions. Like these are the questions that you ask Black women, right? This is how you're gonna go deep with this. These are the tips that you need to be exploring for yourself so that you don't say something crazy. Y'all, I was on a podcast. I probably shouldn't even do this. My media team is going to probably cuss me out. But I was on a podcast the other day with this well-meaning podcaster. And she says, oh my gosh, because I have 2 Black friends. Okay, like don't ever say that, right? Like, don't ever say that. That is not okay. But there's these tips. Like, why did she feel the need to say that? There was something that was going on inside of her that needed to feel like she needed to relate to me in a particular kind of way. And we could have related on so many things, but that's the thing that she thought was most salient in that moment. And it was inappropriate, right? But like, these are the tips that therapists need to be thinking about. These are the questions they need to be asking. I even give a guide, like, use this type of therapy with this type of interventions, and this should be the treatment goal, right? Like I make it so accessible. And then for my Black women who can access all of that, I also have journal prompts for us to be able to use when we are journaling. When you read a chapter on understanding friendships, we just had to launch the other on Friday night. And that was one of the questions from the audience. Like, why did I dedicate a whole chapter to Black women and friendships? But when we understand and break down and deconstruct our friendships, we also start thinking about other things that we need to process and journal. Like there were probably some friendships that we let go of too soon because we weren't not mature enough, or they were not mature enough, or we didn't have problem solving skills. Or we thought that this was a boundary when actually it wasn't a boundary. You know, we were offended, or we didn't feel the permission to be able to say something. And there's journal prompts in there so we can actually process this stuff. Like the book is so, it has so much application. Yeah, so much application to it. And I'm saying that people, when I talk about it, people are like, of course you're saying all that you wrote the book. I wrote the book in a very spiritual kind of way. And now I'm going back and I myself am reading the book again. You guys should see all my like little highlights and stuff like that in there. Because I'm reading it. There's points I'm writing in the book like, oh, this is good, you know? So I'm reading it as a Black woman, and I'm reading it as a therapist too, not just as the author anymore. And so that's how I could talk about it.
Because it comes up for yourself and your own lived experience. You mentioned that earlier with that situation that your wife swooped in and came to the rescue with the ants.
Oh my God.
Your home, you know, that was triggering, you know, so you kind of had to utilize some of those tips, those very tips within your life. And that's going to continue to come up you know, through your lived experiences as they come along, right? Like within your relationship, your marriage, with friendships, like you said, new people that you meet, people you work with, right? I mean, I work in the corporate space, so that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. You know, the stuff that I have to deal with through via virtual email, you know, and how that racks my brain. Courtney, you know, brought something into my life about
EMDR.
EMDR. Oh my gosh, I say it wrong. And how that like helps with like if you experience trauma and like reprocessing. You know, I wouldn't even known about that. I never heard of it.
And brain
you know,
spotting. Get into some brain spotting too.
I'm down for all of the healing, anything that is going to make me better. But I do want to ask about, we talked about like intersectional identities and different things. And this was really important to me as somebody who's new in the community. Okay. I get to say this now. But really, honestly, like unpacking things that came because I was already a mom and then I got divorced. And so there was all of this undoing and then like recognition about myself. And so I didn't want to have a conversation with you without touching on like Black lesbian women, queer Black couples, what unique stressors that you see when navigating care systems.
Oh, and navigating care systems. All right, hold on.
Because even while you're like, I know for me, even one of the things that started to come up that I know a lot of, you know, gay people experience, like my uncle's gay, but it was like I started to hesitate before saying like, oh, this is my girlfriend, now fiance. Like I started to feel uncomfortable in certain situations, or like I was going to be, so it was just a lot of new things that had come into play. But when it comes to care and ensuring that you're going to get people who are experienced, like what, you know, what is your advice there? And just, I think what do you see are, again, the unique stressors?
I think a couple, let me talk about the unique stressors and identity, and then how that ends up connecting to our care systems. But, you know, like I talked about before, there's a culture around race. We already know, but we don't spend a whole lot of time around the culture of gender and subsequent gender norms. And many women, especially Black women, and I talk about it in the book, but Black people are far more conservative than media wants to portray, right? Like while we may not always vote with a particular party line, political party line, we are conservative in a lot of ways. And so
old school from the South with Baptist grandparents. Yes, all of that.
All of the things, right? All of the things. And have very conservative values that sometimes conflict with how people stereotype us, which makes it kind of nuanced. But in being in the community as well, I find that a lot of women are trying to figure out how to navigate their gender roles, because many of them are socialized to be what we historically think of as like feminine. And then they're in another relationship with another. Let me tell you how funny this is. So we got a lot of snow a couple of weeks ago, right? So I've been with my wife almost 10 years. The beginning of March will be 10 years that we've been together.
Congrats.
And so we when we first got together, she was like, so you look femme, but your energy is kind of dumb, and like, you wear heels, but you ready to like do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, but I'm also a single mom. I'm also from Southern California. I was also raised strictly by my dad as a single father. So like, there's all these nuances to who I am. So I don't even try to label myself in those ways. Y'all, it snowed the other day, and my wife was like, can you come outside and help me snow? And I was like, I'm a femme. I'm not going out there to snow.
You got
I'm not going out there to snow. I tried to use these labels, right? That don't always mean anything, but I tried to use it to get out of a chore. Luckily, our neighbors were the people were around and shoveling, and so we got a lot of help from them. But nonetheless, what I'm saying is that one of the things is those gender norms, right? And how we navigate those gender norms. Now, when you talk about women, women are encouraged to talk about certain things, but discouraged to talk about other things like our health. It's why there's this revolution around women talking about menopause, but we weren't talking about that in years past. It's why women are now talking about, postpartum. Those are not things that we were able to talk about that we did not talk about in years past. So what's happening is that we are feeling more empowered to advocate for ourselves in the health space. And sometimes we have to also contend with the fact that our partner, who is also a woman, may not be there yet, right? So they're like, why you tell all these people your business? And it's like, because I need to tell them that. So not only are you fighting with your healthcare provider, I'm making sure that they're listening to you. Sometimes you're fighting with your partner because they think that you've shared too much because they're at a different point on their expression of symptoms journey. And so it's like little things like that are connected to our gender socialization and our gender norms that kind of hold us back. And then there's other things that we have to think about too, like just in our sexual health. We're not always being transparent and vocal about certain things that are happening in our sexual lives and how that may be affecting our physical lives as well. And the guys are a little bit more vocal because of the various ways that they have sex, but the women are still not as vocal and therefore not getting the full health care that they need. I go into spaces now and I always identify as bisexual. I've been married to my wife for 85,000 years and will continue to be married to her for 85,000 years, but just as representation of bisexual people, because we tend to get lost in the sauce. I continue to identify as bisexual, but I go into the doctor's office, my physician's office, and I talk about my sexuality from the very beginning. And if they don't know what they need to be saying, I send them articles because I'm not about to educate them and talk to them the whole time about what they should know about me. Just like people shouldn't be Black women don't need to be teaching their therapists how to treat them. They give them the book instead. I send articles and say, hey, these are the things that are affecting me as a bisexual woman. And these are the things that you need to be prepared for when I come back for my next appointment. I liked your personality, so I'm coming back, but you need to get more education around my identity so you could treat me properly.
I love that.
Ooh, I'm going to use that one.
Yeah.
Because she will send an article quick.
Yes, you got to send the article.
Like my phone randomly throughout the day, she's sending me something.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, girl, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I do.
You have to. Now, I wrote the book so Black women aren't sitting there spending all of their hard-earned co-payment and deductible money educating their therapist. The therapist needs to read the book, but Black women need to know what they are going to say when they get into those sessions and what they need to process as well. So,
and I think we need to know what to look for that is harmful as well. I think that's on the antithesis. I think that's also important too, because I've had times, I think sometimes people may feel intimidated, especially when it's their like new journey in therapy. Yeah. Like you have to like just stick with the one that you get. What I'm saying? No. I wrote an article for Ebony maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and people could Google it. Google it, people, if you're listening. It's in Ebony. Just put in Ebony, Dr. LaNail Plummer, and the article is going to come up. It is How to Find Your Perfect Therapist. I put an interview guide. Y'all, I've been doing guides for my whole career. It is an interview guide. You need to interview your therapist to make sure that is the right fit for you, because otherwise you're not going to get the healing that you want. Even in Onyx, if I have a client that comes into Onyx and they like they feel misaligned with one of my therapists, no, you don't need to leave the whole company. Let me get you a new therapist. That's why we have so many therapists in Onyx, right? Like you read the article, go through the interview. You need to interview
your therapist. Don't, folks who are listening, don't go with the first person that's available, because what you're about to go with them and that journey you're about to walk in, you need to be completely comfortable. And if you're not completely comfortable, then you reach out to me at Onyx and I'll give you a counselor in Onyx. And if they're not in Onyx, then I'll help you find a counselor outside of Onyx, because there are many beautiful companies that are treating Black women and treating them very well. But don't go with the first person if you don't like them. No, ma'am.
And you, just for the people who are listening too, if they are interested in services with Onyx, you guys take people outside of DC as well too, right?
Yeah, we have offices in DC, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, and Johannesburg, South Africa. There's also a new act out that's called the Counseling Compact Act, and 38 states are part of the Counseling Compact Act. So if the person is living in a state that has already approved the act, and we are practicing in a state that has already approved the act, we can do some interstate counseling.
Love that.
Yeah.
See, that's like good information for people to know.
Yeah. We just, funny enough, we just posted it on our social media page maybe like a day or two ago. It's Onyx Therapy Group. That's on all of our socials. But go on there, because we have we talk about politics and legislation and how all of that affects mental health.
Because it does. And
so
that's important.
Yeah, go on the Onyx page. But yeah, I also, my team, it's not me, my team listed out the 38 states that are part of Counseling Compact. So go on there, see if your state is part of the act. And if it is, and you want to work with somebody in Onyx, then just reach out to the team and we'll make that happen. It's quite a few of us. I think it's 24 counselors that are on staff right now.
Awesome. And also for our listeners in Africa as well.
Yeah, that's right. We're in Johannesburg.
Yes, indeed.
So for listeners who are feeling seen by this conversation and want to support your work, what would you invite them to do next?
Buy the book? No.
Buy the book. Buy at least 4 copies.
Buy at least 4 copies.
At least 4.
If you want them signed, buy them and then send them to my office, and I will sign them and send them right back. Just put a Post-it note in there and tell me who I'm signing them to. And I will sign them and send, and I will pay for the postage and send them back, of course. But follow the work. You know what I mean? Like I'm careful when I say it, because I don't want it to sound like egotistical, but I spend so much of my time doing public scholarship, writing articles for newspapers, for magazines, doing podcasts, because it's important to me to provide information around mental health in all the ways and all the platforms that people are accessing it. So put my name in your Google searches and you'll see all the different articles and podcasts that I do, because you're gonna listen and watch this one here. And then there may be also something you're thinking about, like maybe you're thinking about limerence, right? Which is connected to love bombing. You may have been love bombed. And I got a whole article out on limerence, right? Like you may be thinking about how to find a perfect counselor. You may be thinking about being Black and entrepreneurship, because I've owned my company for 13 years now, and I have articles that are connected to that. So put my name in one of the searches. Follow me on social media. I love engaging with my followers. Everybody is always DMing me, and I'm always DMing them right back. So engage with me on socials, and continue to follow the work. I think that this book is about to open some doors for a lot of Black women, for a lot of therapists, and I'm really excited about it. But reach out to us, Onyx Therapy Group, and pick up the book, The Essential Guide for Counseling Black Women.
And we'll include everything also in the show notes, like
for sure.
Links
all
to the
links.
Book, links to your social media, all those things will also be there for anyone who's maybe just listening, not watching, who wants to come back on another podcast platform.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
You got anything else?
I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. I've been waiting. I was so sad when we had to reschedule, so I was like, oh man. But I've been reading all your stuff, and we've been following you for a while, so I just can't wait to see you again in person and get that in real live, like signed copy. And by that time, my book will be like full of highlights and folded pages. But thank you so much for all the work you do. This is such impactful work. It's such an important conversation moving forward. And yeah, I'm happy to share this book with as many people as I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me here. And thank you for sharing space with me in the past and sharing space with me now. And I know we'll have many opportunities to share space in the future. We're going to be on tour. So make sure you follow our social media, because we may see each other sooner than not, right? Because they have me all over the place, and I love it so much. And so let's make it happen.
Yes, we are going to talk offline in just a minute, but thank you so much for joining the WarriorHER Podcast.
Okay.
Women and girls really do run the world.
Yes, we do.
Oh, wait a second. Alan, fix it, Jesus. No, we're supposed to have the outro. Oh no. It's okay. Let's I don't know.
It's okay.
Add it.
We'll add it in there.
Add
it in there, Alan.
Alan.
That's what we have you for. Alan. We appreciate you.
I am so sad because it's so good. Oh man. Okay. Okay. No,
technical difficulties.
It's not a thing. It's literally not working.
It's all right.
I know, but it makes me so sad. Okay, I'm gonna add it in there. Oh, there, it does it automatically. Oh, look at us not knowing. Ha! Edit it out.
Thank you for tuning in to the WarriorHER Podcast. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our incredible guests.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow us on all social media platforms to stay up to date. And remember, girls really do run the world.
'Cause even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause even when I lose, I don't ever take it now. I don't ever take it now. I don't ever take it now. I don't ever take it now.